Welcome back, everyone. As many of you know, for the past, we're moving into 3 years now, we've been very involved with challenges facing our youth. We produced that video series that I know many of you are familiar with. We're about to go into production phase 2 of that to provide some answers and hopefully, to go along with that so that as a community we can understand a little bit more about what our kids are facing. And in an effort to make that resonate, I've been looking around in our community for people who are stepping forward, for people who are saying, I want to be a part of this. I want to use my talents to help adults, educators, grandparents, you name it, business people, business leaders, to understand a bit more about what our kids are going through. And I found the most amazing person, Leah Ferrone, who owns a company called Brave Lion Wholehearted Wellness, based out in Saratoga. So I asked her to join us today to talk about what I just said from her perspective. So let me introduce her. Hello, Leah. How are you?
I'm great. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. In doing the research on you, I just saw it was language. It was the way you position things. I've talked to so many people, Leah. I really do, and you can tell right away the way people just present themselves and talk about it, that they're just really driven to try to contribute. So but that's what I picked up. So let's jump into this,
Great.
so that people understand just a little bit about you and what you do. Can you tell us a bit about what Brave Lion, and I love the fact you use lion, we were talking about that, wholehearted wellness. What is that?
Well, that name, the wholehearted wellness piece, is somewhat new because when I started this business, it was Brave Lion Mindfulness and Movement. And I quickly learned that when people hear the word mindfulness, a lot of different things come up. And I think that word gets used so much now that it feels kind of like a commodity and trendy. And so I found myself trying to explain what mindfulness was to people a lot, which is something I love to do. And when I synthesize what a mindfulness practice, whether it's formal, sitting on a meditation cushion every day, or informal, where you do it with it woven into the fabric of your life, or best case scenario, combo of both, it really is about this sense of cultivating this sense of wholehearted being, to really know yourself, to to study yourself in a really compassionate and curious way. And also, through that, gain the sense of self-worth and value, and it's so heart-centered. And so I thought, well, maybe it makes more sense to talk about mindfulness from this perspective of it being this wholehearted wellness, that these are the tools that you use to really find that center, grounding and truth within, and actually listen to that voice over all the other influences around us and also within us.
Yeah, you're right. I know you studied yoga
I
and
did,
that
yes.
and meditation. I laughed. I give it my best, Leah. I did, and I would sit there in a group, and we'd be, trying to move into a state of mind to meditate and whatever. And all I can think of is the number of times I said to myself, "I think you're there. Oh, we're almost there.
Of course.
Oh, we're
Of
getting
course.
there. We're going to be there any minute now," which was just the
You're
opposite of what it was taking to actually achieve what you just were talking about.
Yeah, but all of that is so valuable. And I think that the formal meditation practice will always be a practice. And I think that's something that helps people feel like it's a little more accessible too. Your mind is always going to be involved, and it's always going to offer you usually a criticism or some kind of judgment about what's happening, and measuring it, whether and qualifying and quantifying its value. And so one of the most important things to do when you're practicing, whatever it looks like and whatever comes up, is just noticing it and letting it pass. Don't get attached to it, or don't let that one thought of how the practice is going lead to the next thought and the next thought, which actually takes you away from the moment. So I always think about that. Sometimes when I sit to do a meditation, I feel like I get into a flow, and it feels like it's something I'm able to calm my body and my mind a bit. And there's days where it's really, really challenging. And I've been doing this for 30 years. So it's really this practice that is not a linear, steady climb. It's something that will grow with you, and that the most important part is that you do really harness and cultivate that kindness to yourself, and just know that the mind's always, it's going to always be busy, but how can we calibrate?
Wow. And listening to what you're saying, Leah, I'm just reminded of a couple of things. You know, we as adults absorb that information that you were just talking about in certain ways. And then I think about teens, and I think
Yep.
about where they are in their development. Now, I'm not even going to pretend to know anything about neuroscience, right? But the whole idea of the mind and the brain and the body working together and how they work through things. And, you know, someone said something to me in the interviews that I was doing for Challenges Facing Youth. They said, "Do you realize that we treat teens as adults, yet their minds aren't even fully developed until they're in mid-20s?" You
Correct.
know?
Yeah, 25.
So I know that you're involved with something I think called the Teen Advisory Committee. I know
Yes.
that you're taking your expertise, and we'll talk a bit about how this plays out in the community even more. But let's focus on our kids. What are you seeing in terms of mental health things that they're struggling with, social media, bullying, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so I very fortunate to work with a lot of children in the programs that I offer. So I push into a lot of different schools in different areas. So I see different demographics, at least in upstate New York. My husband's also a fifth grade teacher, and everyone in our family, on his side at least, are educators. So I do also hear a lot from the educator's perspective, and I also taught preschool for a while, and also have I'm a mom, so I have a lot of friends that are parents. And what it seems is that everyone realizes that we are facing a time where the play-based childhood. I'm referencing Jonathan Haidt's, Anxious Generation book, which is really so pivotal in the work that I'm doing right this moment, and where Brave Lion has really shifted focus. Is that most of us in my late 40s had this play-based childhood where we could go outside and explore and discover, and it was really child-led. It wasn't play that was structured by an adult. And, in the last couple of decades, we've shifted over where screens have dominated, and we've brought kids inside more. And they're really channeled into a lot of structured activity and play. They're like really scheduled, if you will. And some of that also, I've done a lot of research. It has to do with this, what they're kind of calling like this toxic achievement culture too, like where parents start to shift to like everything's got to be about what you're going to be when you grow up and what college you're going to get into, and all of these future oriented projections and fears that really drove making our children feel like they had to be and do certain things to be worthy of love and belonging. I think that was like a big shift that happened in the last couple of decades. And then with the saturation of technology and the dominance of it in all of our lives. So I'll say two things about that. One, we're robbing, a lot of our kids the opportunity to really exercise and honor their human brain through embodied experiences where they're playing and having interactions and relationships with other people, where that's all the learning, right? And how to navigate the world. And that's being replaced by this, this screen-based, I guess I can call it learning or connection. But also, us adults are also very screen dominated now. So I think we're seeing a lot of what's happening in the family and in the home. There's a lot being taken away from the focus and the attention that we're able to give each other when we come together as a family. So that quality of presence, when you sit down with your child and you make eye contact and you really hear what they have to say or what they're going through, and you have you're not distracted or pulled into the direction of like holding your phone or trying to capture the moment. And so we're seeing so many children that are feeling isolated and anxious, so much anxiety. And I think a lot of it comes from the uncertainty that they're seeing, because in the world, which is something that we really have to be like, I think kids are having a hard time being comfortable with being uncomfortable. In some of the things that they have to navigate. And I think a lot of it also has to do with how some parents are maybe, as Jonathan Haidt says, we're protecting our kids too much in the physical world and not enough in the digital and virtual world. And so we see a lot of trouble with kids being able to stay on task and focus. I think this I would only be speculating about, but we hear a lot about a rise in ADHD diagnosis. And in some ways that's really good because I think there's more awareness about it. But in the same breath, the condition of some of the aspects of our kids' youthful experiences is dominated by screens, which really does erode your ability to stay on task and focus on something in the real world. So I think there's a lot of things at play.
So much, Leah, so much of what you're talking about is so well said. And it really reminds me of that the teens seem to be getting their validation and their approval from a screen. How many likes did I get for a comment or something? Or did I wear the right clothing? It gets down to some of these things where the lack of human interaction, because let's face it, their real validation and real approval comes from the back and forth of the human experience, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You build your self-confidence that way, but you can see it in the expression on another individual's face or something. Now, we ran into that. Just one quick sidebar. Leah has mentioned a book, Jonathan Haidt's. The name of this book is called The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Health. Think about what that title means, right? It does really get to you. Go ahead.
That book, when it came out, I was already following Jonathan Haidt's work. I read The Coddling of the American Mind, which I thought was fascinating. And so when his book came out, I was really anticipating it, and I got it as soon as it came out. And this was also a time where I was starting to feel as an adult that trying to build my business on social media was really not good for my mental health. Like I was really having a hard time with social media because I've never been on it before. So I read this book, and it was so stunning and staggering to read the statistics and the way that he kind of illustrates the landscape too. That was the beginning for me of my own journey, really taming technology for myself mindfully. And then diving so deep into all of the concepts he's talking about. And he's really started an incredible movement. So I'm so grateful for what's come from that book.
I wanted to make this point. People have said to me many times, well, you're not going to change hopefully it's not addiction, but the attraction, let's say, that teens will have with social media. It's not going to go away. So in essence, you had written something that caught my attention. You said, the goal really here is for a healthier relationship with their digital presence. And I thought that was a really interesting way to put words together there. From what you're saying, our viewers, I know, are really interested in this, Leah. What kind of advice do you give? They've got teens. They're having trouble. Look, let's face it, teen years are hard to even communicate with your child. What can people do to kind of break through or better understand or better listen to what their teens are going through?
Yeah, this is a critical piece, I think, that we need to bring a lot of attention to. First of all, I want to say that I by no means want to say that technology is bad. Technology is wonderful, and it is affording us so many things that are so important, especially when it comes to accessibility with people that differently abled folks. My cousin's daughter is losing her vision at 17 years old, and the ability that technology is giving her to have to thrive in this world is invaluable. So this is, like you said, is not about saying that tech is bad and it's got to be an all or nothing. It's just like mindfulness. How do we be in relationship with any aspect of our life in a way that we're feeling self-directed and aligned with what's true and right for us, and have that kind of that agency to make choices? And so, yeah, you could be on social media, of course, but being really aware of why you're going there and what you're hoping to find or interact with. And, really being in tune too with like when you get there, Like, are you staying focused on your intention of getting on social media? But when it comes to the youth, this is the thing I go back to all the time. I mean, I got the fortune of growing up in a time where we didn't have devices and social media. So I have no idea what it's like to be a teen today, also in the state of the world today. It's kind of unique. And I often find that parents and any adults kind of look at children and are like, get off that device. You're always like, they're barking these kind of like judgmental comments at them. First of all, they didn't ask to be right in this situation. They weren't given, most often weren't given the proper like parameters and, tools to have a healthy relationship with tech. And they're designed, these platforms are designed to be addictive. And as you mentioned, child's brain is not fully developed until 25 years old. So the number one thing I say is that we have a really important job of helping our youth see opportunity and option that is like juicy and intriguing off screen. And one of the most important things is that we do validate their experience and also ask them. So I always say, when I have never been on TikTok or Snapchat, I know nothing about these apps except for some of the aspects of how they can be dangerous and also beneficial. But I like to talk to kids like, what goes on in Snapchat? Like, what do you do there? Like, what makes it interesting, or what are the things that kind of frustrate you? Like, I in a really curious, genuine way, not in a way where you're writing a research paper. And with my nephews in particular, I had this experience recently where we were all on a family vacation and everyone kept saying like, you gotta get off your phone, get off your phone. The lake's right there, this or that. But it was done in a tone that felt like other than the experience that they were having. And so I sat down with one of them, and they're twins. And I said, I'm just curious, are you watching something that's rotting your brain, or is it really valuable to you? And he said, I think it's brain rot. And I was like, okay. I said, we want to come outside with me? And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I didn't have a plan. So I was like, we're going to play chess. Like there's a big chess thing. And he's like, okay. So we have to, in many ways, really cultivate and that relationship of trust and honor them, and then help them find the alternatives. And one of the things that is so important to do is that when you're starting to nurture a healthier relationship with your technology, and that might include, weaning off or limiting the time, changing how much you're on there, in advance of the times that you're trying to pull away from the phone, have the list of all of the things that you do enjoy and that you do like, those hobbies and interests, so that you don't have to come up with it in the moment when you're putting your phone down. You already have it mapped out. One of the coolest things I saw was this idea of doing it as like a menu, like a restaurant menu. So you have an appetizer and an entree and a dessert, like the amount of time. So maybe you only have, you want an activity that's like an appetizer, so it's not a very long period of time. It's something you can do easily and it's accessible and quick. Maybe the entree is like a bigger thing. Like, I'm going to learn how to crochet. I mean, I wouldn't start with that with a teen. Like, don't introduce crochet as the first choice, but maybe something that they might be interested in learning. And that's like something that's going to happen over days, and there's going to be a progression over time. And so they have different kinds of options that fit the circumstances that they already know they enjoy or that they're kind of curious about. That's a really important piece.
I'd love that analogy, by the way. Boy, we're out of time, but I wanted just to say to our viewers, so much of what Leah is talking about is probably very helpful information. You'll see a web address at the bottom of the screen. You can find out more about what she's doing, what she's talking about, which I find fascinating, because it all, to me, Leah, it adds up to the fact that you're listening to them.
Yes.
We're not talking to them, which can be perceived as talking down to them. We are actually listening to them. And by doing so, the role that they play and the responsibility they have in the outcome is completely different. So that just really, well, I have really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I look forward to checking in with you as we continue to come up with ideas about how, as a community, we can nurture our youth and make certain that they feel they know they're heard and that they can become contributing members. So thank you very, very much.